Having a good milk supply is completely based on supply and demand theory. So that means the more stimulation a mom gets, the more message goes up to her brain to say, let's make more milk. In the first few days of a baby's life, we want them to eat about every 2 to 3 hours. That's the goal window of time. This is when we're catching baby in their feeding cues, where they're first showing those signs of interest, and then to their mid cues when they're kind of wiggly and active and searching to get latched on. Babies can eat as soon as 1 hour or as late as 4 hours, but we don't want them going longer than that because babies tend to get sleepier with missed feeding cues, or their blood sugar starts to drop, which means they have low energy. So think in the first few days, you're trying to feed your baby every 1 to 4 hours with that goal spacing of about 2 to 3. Now, this equals about 8 or more times of breastfeeding in a whole day. So for a baby, that means that they're getting little amounts of colostrum at every single feeding. Now, your colostrum is perfectly matched to your baby. It's going to coat their gut and create a seal so that it's preventing bacteria and viruses from sticking. Colostrum is thick and sticky, and so it does take some effort to pull it out. So as your baby is eating, then every single feeding, they're building up strength in their cheek muscles so that when a mom has a bigger milk supply, then that baby has the strength to handle that faster flow. Now, every time a baby eats and they're getting those little amounts of colostrum, they're practicing this skill, and mom is getting that stimulation that helps to build up her milk supply. So I want you to think of your goal window of feeding your baby is about every 2 to 3 hours. Could be sooner with your baby's cues, could be later, still with your baby's cues. So if you're looking at your baby at the 2-hour mark and they are fast asleep and you can't wake them up, that's okay. They're not ready. If you get to the 3-hour mark and they're still asleep, and if you take off the blanket and wiggle them around and they're not showing any cues, not showing any interest, then they can go another hour. But once they get to that 4-hour mark, then that's when you want to work a little bit harder to wake them up and get them going. I'm really talking about this section in just the first few days of a baby's life. After about a week or two, that's when a baby is more coordinated with breastfeeding, a mom's milk supply has increased, and it's going smoother. So that's when you can back off on your rigid times and just feed your baby with cues. Now, we always want to feed babies with cues, but we don't have to stress as much when they're a little bit older. So then by the time a baby is about 1 month, 2 months old, then you're still feeding on demand, but the spacing could look different than in those first few days. So just remember, the more a mom is getting stimulation, the better her milk production will be. Colostrum will be there in the first few days, and then somewhere between day 2 and day 5 is when her milk supply builds and it becomes that transitional milk. It still has those qualities of colostrum. So it's going to be yellow in color, but in bigger volume. And it's like a light lemony color. And then the more she breastfeeds or the more she pumps, the faster that milk supply builds up and the better able the baby is to handle those bigger volumes. So follow your baby's cues, breastfeed 8 or more times in a day. And this is like putting in your order in the first few days for the type of supply that you'd like to see later on and that your baby needs.